Hi, I'm Richard Smith, the author of the book, Such a Mind Is This? A Biblical Theological Study of Thinking in the Old Testament. In this video, I want to share a few thoughts about the mind or the heart in the Old Testament based upon my book. So let's begin. It turns out that the heart, or the image of the heart, has played a prominent role throughout human history in various religions and literatures, and has appeared as a symbol in various forms. So I'd like to share with you a few of those now. So it has shown up as a house, maybe the house of the soul, even an acorn, a book, a cup, although I doubt a cup such as this, the wheel, maybe the wheel of life, as various kinds of fruit, even as a harp. But my favorite is the rose. It has also functioned as an image or a theme having to do with eternity. So, for example, the scale. In Egyptian mythology, when a soul passed from, or a heart passed from life to death, the heart was weighed in the scales against the feather of truth. And if the heart was found impure or untrue, then it was eaten by a monster. But if it was found true, it would pass on to eternity with the gods. Another comes from Aztec religion. The most handsome, attractive young men were often given 1 year of basically carnal delights and treated as if they were gods and fattened up, and then killed, and their hearts were fed to the eagle of the sun. And then finally this one, I admit this one's a little bit gross or disgusting, but this is the best I could do in terms of illustrations. Many tribal societies, after a battle, would eat the hearts of the folks that they beat as a way to gain their strength and show their dominance over them. So once again, I apologize for this rather disgusting picture. Now, in many cases, particularly throughout the West, there's been an ongoing debate between the heart versus the head. And sometimes the head wins and is dominant over the heart in terms of being dominant, the mind over the emotions and sentimentalities, etc. Other times, it's the opposite, and the heart wins. Now, this seems to be a trend throughout human intellectual history. There have been times, particularly in the West, where rationality, the mind, was dominant, such as the Age of Reason and the Enlightenment, and of course now in modernity. Other times, however, there were reactions, and the heart was considered the most important, and sincerity of feelings and sentimentality and experience and emotions and so forth. And so the heart won, such as in Romanticism, and of course now in postmodernism. But in reality, what humankind has strived for very often is some kind of a balance between mentality and subjectivity, between rationality and emotion or sentimentality. Now, I'd like to illustrate the heart in the Old Testament. They saw 4 aspects of the heart. Of course, they knew it was a physical organ, and they knew that it was central to life expectancy. And there is at least one example of a heart attack of Nabal in 1 Samuel 25:37, which says his heart died within him and became like a stone. They knew it was also associated with emotions. And so we see expressions like, in this case, God himself saying, it grieved him to his heart that earth had become so corrupt. And then we know that out of the heart come desires and choices, priorities. For example, and it's a positive example, Ezra the scribe set his heart to study the scriptures. And then the 4th aspect, not often considered, unfortunately, and in today's environment, is that of thought. Thoughts originate in the heart. And this is the theme that I will develop now. The heart in the Old Testament represents the mental capacity to receive, inventory, and evaluate data. It is fully aware of its surroundings and in sensory, emotional, intellectual contact with its context. So if, for example, we see this dilemma here again of the heart dominating the mind. But even if you say that you are a person who prefers, for example, a subjective spirituality, that for reasons one or another of your theological tradition minimize the mind and intellectuality, and you say, no, my religion is one of emotions and feelings, sincerity and experience and so forth. Or you might say, no, my religion is emphasis on the heart, but of course in our sincerity of choices and the holiness of our choices and desires. But even if you say that, emotions, choices, desires, and feelings presuppose a mental evaluation beforehand. Somewhere we pick up through culture and our childhood, our religious background, criteria and by which to evaluate what is positive and negative in our emotions, feelings, choices, and desires. So the mind lies behind everything we do. In fact, I would argue it's the most precious gift that God has given to us, aside from, quote, eternity in the heart. So in the Bible, there really is no hearts versus head problem. We feel with intentionality. As I said, our mind plays a role in everything. And we think with emotions. We're not robots or intelligent machines or computers. We have feelings. So in reality, what we're looking for is some kind of symbiotic relationship between the mind and the heart, between the ideas that we've curated in our mind and the desires and intentions of our heart. As Proverbs 23:7a says in the New King James Version, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So the heart thinks. It's more than emotions and desires. In fact, in the Old Testament, there's no word for the brain. There really isn't a concept for the brain. They believe all thinking took place in the heart. And the word mind very often, or mindset, the word heart very often is a stand-in for the word mind or mindset throughout the Old Testament. And of course, we must interpret on a case-by-case basis. But let me give you a few examples where it seems explicit. From the book of Ecclesiastes, I applied my mind, heart literally, to seek. I searched with my mind, heart, how to do something. Your mind, your heart knows that, this or that. And a wise man's mind, heart, inclines to this or that. In Deuteronomy in particular, thinking terms appear often with the word heart. So let me give you a few examples. Depart from your heart or your mind, meaning to forget. To know in your heart, again, mind, indicating these words or intellectual content, in particular the commandments of the Lord. Or to say in your heart, your mind, unspoken thoughts, which of course God observes. And then the phrase that God gives us a heart or a mind to understand revelation. Deuteronomy 5:29 is particularly insightful about this theme, and it's from this verse that I obtained the title for my book. Let me read to you that verse, and then I'll give you the context. Oh, that they had such a mind or heart as this always, to fear me, to keep all my commandments, that it may go well with them and with their descendants forever. Now, the context was the theophany in the Mount Horeb, where God appeared with Moses and was observable by the elders and the people of Israel, and he wrote the 10 Commandments. But it was obviously a terrifying experience for the people. And so afterwards, basically, the elders said to Moses, look, this is untenable. We can't go up that mountain with you again, given the glory and majesty of God. You go up there, you represent us, you listen to what he says and bring it back, and we will obey you. And then afterward, God said, they got it right. Their attitude, their outlook was correct. Their analysis of the situation was valid. Then he said, oh, that they had such a mind as this always, meaning to fear me and to keep all my commandments. Now, that mindset pleased God. Now, the intellectual context of this particular experience also reveals its cognitive or mental aspects. The word voice is mentioned. Wrote, heard, seen, speak, hear, and teach. Obviously, an intellectual or mental context for this verse. Now, Deuteronomy 6:5 is the creedal nucleus of the Old Testament, and I would argue of the New Testament as well, as you will see. It is called the famous Shema, which says, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart in Hebrew, and with all your soul and with all your might. In other words, given the truth that the Lord is their God and he is the only God, implicates or demands of the people that they first of all love God with their mind and then their soul and then with all their might. Now, to emphasize how important this is and how important the concept of mentality or mindset is, when Jesus quotes this commandment in Mark 12, he actually spells it out. He says, you're to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Again, the intellectual context of Deuteronomy 6 is specifically intellectual or pedagogical. For example, in the following verses in 7 and 9, it says, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit down in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand that you can read, and there shall be as frontlets between your eyes. In other words, limiting your vision, what you look at with, in other words, looking at things with priorities. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. In other words, that are to be declared publicly and also within the family, and observed and written and considered. Again, with the mind. So we see the centrality of the mind in biblical spirituality. We know that thinking impacts every area of life. This is true not only in biblical revelation, but in common experience, in its common sense. The mind, desire, and capacity in that order should be dedicated to the Lord, as the Shema illustrates. In fact, we can diagram it somewhat in this way. The mind or the heart, or put it this way, minds and hearts that are influenced by revelation impact their motives and their soul, their desires, and that impacts what they do with their capacity, with their might, with their hands, with all the capacities and gifts that God gives us, but directed finally by the mind and what we know. Now, this can be demonstrated finally by prayers for intellectual piety in the Old Testament, and it really helps to use the word mind instead of heart to draw out the significance of these particular prayers, and I have two to show you. From Psalm 131, 1 and 2. O Lord, my heart, mind, is not lifted up. In other words, it's not proud. It's not looking for information it doesn't have access to or shouldn't have access to. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. In other words, this person recognizes the distinction between the creator and the creature. But I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. And then secondly, from Psalm 139, 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. And then the last slide, which I already advanced ahead for you to see, is the significance. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep your mind, heart, with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life." So I hope this has been useful for you, and I hope that you think about this more and that you would look at more verses and context in the Old Testament where the word heart appears, and read into it as appropriate mind, and think about the intellectuality of spirituality and the intellectual piety of the Old Testament.